Her headset crackled with a sound sharper than the sting of cheap coffee consumed at 3 in the morning. An 800-mile stretch of bruised purple ocean lay infinitely below, offering nothing but the view of water. No land appeared anywhere. No backup existed. Just a quiet amber light flashing on the right console, and the sudden unmistakable smell of melting copper wire. Natanya Cassidy shifted her position in the ejection seat, searching for some comfort that wasn't available. The survival harness created a familiar dull ache, pressing into her left collarbone, an irritation she had been ignoring for the past 4 hours. When you were strapped inside an F-15E Strike Eagle, it wasn't the sleek marvel of modern aerodynamics it appeared to be on the outside. Instead, it transformed into a vibrating, claustrophobic tin can. The air inside carried the mingled smells of old sweat, aviation fuel, and the stale spearmint gum she had chewed since leaving the tarmac. Beneath them, the North Atlantic presented itself as a flat black iron slab, a sunless, indifferent expanse. From 32,000 feet no waves were visible, only a textured void that consumed any light filtering down from the overcast sky. "Are you picking up that smell?" The question came from Dwayne Sullivan, her weapons systems officer positioned a few feet behind her. His voice lacked the manufactured cool drawl most aviators practiced. Instead, it was nasal, tight, and slightly pitched higher than normal. Natanya took a moment before responding. Through her oxygen mask, she inhaled the regulated air, which suddenly became tainted. What began as a subtle tang, like a penny left on your tongue, bloomed into something unmistakable, the acrid stench of an electrical fire. Ozone mixed with burning plastic. "Yeah, I smell it," Natanya replied, her tone flat and emotionless. The adrenaline surge she might have expected didn't come. Instead, what washed over her was profound exhaustion and annoyance. Fatigue weighed heavily on her. Her bladder felt uncomfortably full. A stack of post-flight paperwork awaited her back at base, forms she had been dreading. Now, on top of everything else, this. The amber caution light on the right instrument panel flickered before settling into a steady glow. LENGFEED. "The left side is showing feed pressure warning," Dwayne announced. His hands made an audible rustling sound as he flipped through thick laminated pages, the emergency checklist. That plastic sound, loud over the intercom, seemed useless in the moment. "I see it, Dave," Natanya muttered. Her gloved fingers rested with minimal pressure on the center stick. She examined her engine displays. The numbers displayed were entirely wrong. The left engine's turbine temperature was climbing rapidly, while fuel flow dropped sharply. This wasn't the catastrophic explosion Hollywood always portrayed. The reality differed significantly. Planes seldom erupted in spectacular fireballs. Rather, they succumbed quietly to systemic, cascading failures. A frayed wire arcs. A composite seal fails. A microvalve gets stuck. Millions of dollars of sophisticated engineering gradually transforms into a heavy glider suspended above an ocean that can kill in 3 minutes. "According to the checklist, we isolate the left manifold," Dwayne read aloud. His breathing had become heavy. The microphone picked up the wet sound of him swallowing nervously. "Don't bother with that," Natanya said flatly. "What do you mean? It's listed as Step 2. Don't bother? Look at what your total fuel is showing, Dave." Silence fell across the intercom save for the rhythmic hiss of their oxygen equipment. Natanya kept her eyes fixed on her own readout. The digital display showing their internal wing tank capacity scrolled downward at a terrifying pace, resembling a stopwatch running in reverse. They weren't simply losing feed pressure. The electrical short had probably set off a cascade failure in the transfer pumps, or possibly sparked an uncontained bleed air leak currently melting the main fuel lines. JP-8 jet fuel was pouring into the slipstream at approximately 50 gallons per minute. A strange coldness began settling over Natanya. Detachment, clarity. Her hands remained steady. Instead, she noticed minor, irrelevant details. The fraying stitching on her Nomex flight glove at the thumb. The low subsonic vibration of her remaining functional engine traveling through her boot soles. She reached upward and toggled the radio switch. "Control Eagle 2-1, I am declaring an emergency." The response took several seconds to arrive. Distance was devouring the radio waves. When Trayvon Mitchell, the AWACS controller, finally transmitted back, his voice carried an infuriating calm. "Eagle 2-1, Control acknowledges emergency. What is the nature, and what are your intentions?" "We have a massive fuel hemorrhage for a nature, plus an uncontained electrical fire active in the left bay," Netanya transmitted, her tone sounding conversational despite the heavy knot of dread in her stomach. "Intentions remain uncertain at this moment. We are fast approaching bingo fuel." Copy 21. Our radar indicates 840 miles between you and Keflavik. An alternate airfield is available at Narsarsuaq, though that location sits 600 miles away. "We won't reach 600 miles, Control," Netanya stated. The calculations ran through her mind. At their current bleed rate, the right engine would stop receiving fuel in 12 minutes, perhaps 14 if she throttled down to minimal power. But reducing throttle meant dropping altitude, which meant burning fuel faster in denser air. A problem with no solution. "Maybe 10 minutes of sustained flight, maximum." "Eagle 21, stand by." Trevin paused. That brief hesitation betrayed everything. The AWACS crew was examining their screens, drawing circles around Netanya's position, and discovering those circles contained nothing except freezing water. "Netanya!" Dwayne's voice came through the internal channel. His use of her first name indicated he had done the math himself. "We have to ditch." Netanya gazed downward at the ocean. Water temperature was 34 degrees Fahrenheit. Even with their exposure suits, the initial impact against the swells, attempting to inflate their raft during 20-knot winds, and the isolation pressing down on them, it wasn't a survivable situation. It was a funeral delayed. "We aren't going to ditch," Netanya said, keeping her voice soft. "There's no choice about it." Dwayne's voice cracked. The professionalism frayed noticeably. Panic started showing through. He was only 26, engaged, with a golden retriever at home. Netanya was 34, divorced, with only a neglected fern depending on her. It seemed profoundly unjust that they would have to share the same ending. "I said we aren't ditching, Dave. Stay quiet and let me operate this aircraft." Netanya's right hand gripped the stick firmer. The rubber felt slick beneath her palm. The left engine finally powered down, the airframe shaking with a sickening thud as turbine blades seized. The master warning erupted across the cockpit, a blinding red glow paired with a piercing klaxon drilling into her temples. She hit the master caution reset, silencing the alert. The silence afterward was considerably worse. The jet pulled heavily leftward, its dead weight obvious. Netanya pushed right rudder hard, her calf muscle burning from forcing the pedals. The F-15 was flying asymmetrically, fighting its own aerodynamics. "Control 21, Netanya transmitted. "My left engine is offline. Fuel situation is critical. I need to know about surface contacts within a 50-mile radius immediately." 21, Control searching for surface tracks. "I'm seeing a weather vessel 200 miles north and—" Trevon paused. Static hissed, like something frying. "There's a civilian maritime contact, a commercial freighter, the Goliath, flying Panama registry heading 090 degrees. Distance to it? 32 miles directly ahead. You're nearly right on top of him." 32 miles? At their present airspeed, that represented roughly 3 minutes. "Get his maritime frequency. Connect me to him," Netanya commanded. 21, what exactly is your intention? "That vessel lacks a flight deck. It's a container ship. You cannot land a Strike Eagle on a civilian freighter." "I'm not asking to land on a runway, Trevon." Netanya's cynicism bled into her tone. "I'm asking to land on a pad. Link me." "Netanya, you've lost your mind," Dwayne hissed from behind. "We eject near the ship. Parachutes get us down. They recover us. That's standard procedure." "Dave," Netanya said, her voice becoming colder and harder, surprising herself with the resonance. Check that wind drift indicator on your display. Surface winds are gusting at 45 knots. High-altitude ejection means we drift nearly 2 miles from the ship before entering the water. Swells are 34 degrees with parachutes pulling us under. They won't retrieve us fast enough. The ship needs 4 miles just to complete a turnaround. We don't survive in the water, so what do you suggest? Should I belly land across shipping containers? We get smeared across a mile of steel. Only if you don't thread the opening, Netanya quietly said. The radio crackled. A heavily accented voice cut through the noise. The transmission quality was terrible, seeming to originate from a tin can connected by string. Unknown military aircraft, this is Captain Varga commanding the motor vessel Goliath. Your control notified us of your emergency situation. Netanya swallowed. Her mouth had become incredibly parched. Her tongue stuck to her palate. A single bead of sweat traced a line down her spine, chilling her beneath the heavy flight suit. Captain Varga, I'm Eagle 2-1. A crippled fighter jet is what I'm flying. Roughly 6 minutes of fuel is what remains, and my navigator and I cannot endure an oceanic ditching given these conditions. Describe your deck setup currently. A long pause followed. Natasha could detect the low rumble of the ship's enormous diesel engines filtering through the captain's microphone. 21. We operate as a post-Panamax freighter. Shipping containers make up our cargo. Our deck is absent. Stacks reach 5 containers high from bridge to bow. Is the stack arrangement flat? Natasha questioned. Her eyes moved to the fuel gauge. 3 minutes of usable fuel remained. The right engine sputtered momentarily, starving for fuel before restarting. The whole airframe convulsed violently. It is even configuration, Varga answered, sounding deeply confused. But you cannot possibly land here. The gantry cranes. Listen to me with complete attention, Captain. Natasha interrupted. She kept her voice level, not loud. Her tone stripped away any possibility of negotiation. I have 2 people aboard. I have no landing gear. My left engine is gone, and no runway exists for 800 miles. You become my runway. This is madness, Varga breathed through the channel. Perhaps it is. Turn your vessel to face the wind. Give maximum speed. I need you reducing my approach velocity. Captain Varga, do not follow those instructions, Duane screamed over the radio, entirely abandoning protocol. Natasha, this will kill us. Press the ejection handles now. Eject. Dave, if you activate those handles, I will break your fingers. Natasha snapped over the internal channel, shutting him off from the main frequency. Hitting the water equals death. Hitting the ship gives us 50/50 odds. She switched back to the external line. Captain, I will bring this aircraft in at low altitude. Your container stacks become my landing zone. I need personnel cleared from upper areas. Empty the bridge wings. We arrive hot, and there will be fire. 21. This is control. Trevone broke through. His voice had shed its AWACS composure. You are directing a civilian vessel into a collision scenario. Authorization for this I cannot provide. I'm not seeking authorization, Tom. I'm informing you to ready rescue aircraft for collecting our charred remains off a cargo vessel. The clouds parted through the canopy, just a gap, but sufficient. Below them sat a microscopic white rectangle amid churning black swells. The Goliath. It resembled a floating shoebox. Netanya pushed the stick downward, diving steeply. The altitude readout unwound quickly. 20,000, then 15,000. The wind shrieked against the canopy with a hollow, rushing scream. The stick's vibrations intensified violently, rattling her forearm bones. She could detect fear's scent now, not simply Duane's panic, but her own as well. It carried a sour smell, reminiscent of old coins and stomach acid. Her hands had finally begun shaking, but she locked her wrists against her knees, steadying her control inputs. Varga, I have visual on you, Netanya said. Are you turning to face the wind? Turning now, 21. May God protect you. Below, the tiny white shoebox began rotating, carving a massive white crescent of foam into the dark ocean. Netanya reviewed her fuel. 1 minute. She pulled the throttle back on her remaining engine. The jet groaned, the nose dropping heavily. She wasn't piloting anymore. She was managing the trajectory of a 15-ton brick. The container ship's top became visible, a mosaic composed of red, blue, and corroded orange boxes. The surface wasn't smooth. Tying rods and gaps interrupted it. If her nose dipped into one of those gaps, the jet would flip and detonate, converting them to ash before impact was even registered. "Dave," Netanya said softly. A sob crackled through the intercom. "I don't want to perish here, Netanya. Not in this place." "You won't die today," she lied, her voice becoming tender, almost parental. The cynicism had vanished, replaced by cold, calculating concentration. "Secure your harness. Place your head back. Keep your hands away from the ejection handles." She positioned the F-15's nose to align with the ship's stern. The freighter appeared massive at this distance, rising from the water like a steel wall. The wind was violently throwing the heavy aircraft from side to side. Netanya manipulated the stick and rudder in quick, violent movements, battling the crosswinds. 50 seconds of fuel remained. "Retract gear," Netanya whispered to herself. She didn't touch the lever. Landing gear would only grab containers and cause a flip. They had to glide. 500 feet separated them from the water now, roaring toward the bridge structure's rear. "Clear the structure," Netanya commanded into the radio. She banked sharply right, skirting the ship's towering smokestack. The freighter's diesel exhaust actually reached into the cockpit vents. Thick, choking, industrial. She leveled across the vast expanse of stacked containers. The flat surface rushed upward at 160 miles per hour. "Brace," Netanya ordered. The right engine coughed, sputtered, then went silent. Complete fuel exhaustion. The cockpit displays went entirely dark, as main generators tripped offline. The heavy silence from dead engines was replaced by deafening wind rushing. They were plummeting. Gravity reclaimed them. Without engine thrust, the F-15 Strike Eagle transformed from aircraft into a 30,000-pound anvil. The jet's belly collided with the corrugated steel covering the shipping containers. The sound wasn't a boom. It was a prolonged, ear-shattering shriek of titanium tearing and paint vaporizing. The collision threw Netanya violently against her shoulder straps. Her helmet struck the front console, cracking the visor and flooding her vision with blinding white stars. Copper taste flooded her mouth again, but this time it was her own blood from a bitten lip. They didn't simply slide, they bounced. The uneven ridges of cargo containers functioned as a washboard. The jet's nose pitched violently upward, then slammed downward, crushing the radar dome as if it were plastic. "Lower your head," Netanya roared, spitting blood onto her microphone. Whether Dwayne responded wasn't audible. The friction produced a deafening howl. Through the cracked canopy, Netanya observed the ship's superstructure approaching, a massive steel wall painted industrial white. Sparks, brilliant orange, fountained over the cockpit sides as the jet's underbelly ground against the metal boxes. The left wing struck a raised ventilation unit mounted on one container. The collision force snapped the wing root cleanly away. The jet jerked violently leftward in a sickening yaw. Netanya was thrown hard against her seat's side. Her ribs ground against the rigid survival vest. They were crabbing laterally now, totally uncontrolled, sliding toward the stack's edge. A 90-foot drop into freezing, churning black water waited beyond that edge. Netanya forced her boots down onto the right rudder pedal, desperate to straighten the nose, but hydraulics were completely dead. She pressed against useless metal. "We're going to go over." The realization was surprisingly quiet and logical rather than panicked. She hated being a passenger in her own aircraft, but the missing left wing had shifted their center of gravity. The broken stub dug savagely into a heavy refrigerated container's roof. The metal gouged, folded, and bit deep. The violent catch acted like an anchor. The deceleration was severe. It forcibly removed air from Natanya's lungs. The harness snapped her backward into the seat, with force sufficient to bruise her spine. Then everything stopped. Transition from 160 miles per hour shrieking slide to complete stillness was disorienting. The heavy, deafening friction roar vanished, replaced by the low, steady thrum of the ship's diesel engines vibrating through the steel boxes beneath. Natanya remained motionless. She couldn't move. Her hands were locked around the control stick in a death grip. Her knuckles had turned bone white, muscles in her forearms burning from lactic acid. She forced breathing. Inhale. Exhale. The air carried the taste of atomized rust, burnt rubber, and sharp toxic aviation fluid, boiling off hot metal. "Dave," she croaked. Her throat felt full of broken glass. Silence came from the back seat. "Dave, respond." She hit the internal comm switch harder. A ragged, wet gasp crackled in her ear. I'm breathing. Are you suffering injuries?" "I'm uncertain," Dwayne stammered. His voice shook so violently words barely formed. My left arm, it feels wrong. Hot." Natanya finally forced her fingers to release the stick. They had gone completely numb. She reached up with a heavy, uncoordinated arm and gripped the manual canopy release handle. "We need to vacate the aircraft," Natanya said. Her voice contained no command or heroism, just profound tiredness. "If fuel is pooling below us, this whole stack ignites. Remove your pins. Unfasten yourself." She yanked the release. The explosive bolts, fortunately, were still functional. A sharp pop echoed, and the heavy acrylic canopy lifted, caught instantly by violent ocean wind. The cold hit like a physical blow. 34 degrees carried by 40-knot gusts cut straight through her Nomex flight suit. It smelled of brine, diesel exhaust, and raw freezing moisture. Natasha hauled herself upward. Her legs were trembling without control. It wasn't fear anymore. It was the adrenaline crash, her body purging the chemical cocktail, maintaining hyperfocus for 20 minutes. She turned toward Dwayne. He fumbled with his harness with one hand. His left arm hung limp at his side, shoulder dislocated or broken, pressing awkwardly against the seat. His visible face beneath the raised visor had turned the color of wet chalk. Vomit covered his chest. Natasha offered no comforting words. She lacked the energy. She climbed awkwardly across the console, balancing on the cockpit rail's edge. The wind threatened pushing her right off the jet. "Give me your functional hand," she grunted, reaching into the back seat. Dwayne looked upward, eyes wide and unfocused. He reached out, his gloved hand weakly gripping hers. Natasha planted her boots against the ejection seat rail and pulled. Her bruised ribs screamed, a sharp, white-hot pain lancing through her side. She hauled him upward, dragging him from the metal tub until he spilled over the jet's side, collapsing onto the corrugated container roof. Natanya dropped down beside him. The metal beneath their boots was slick with sea spray and fluids leaking from the wrecked F-15. She examined her plane. The Strike Eagle, a $50 million apex predator, was now a mangled heap of scrap. The nose was flattened, the canopy gone, the left wing entirely sheared off. It rested precariously across two rusted red shipping boxes, the right wing jutting out over empty ocean. It appeared pathetic. Heavy boots clanged on metal. Natanya turned. A catwalk ran along the container stack's side. Climbing the steep metal stairs were 5 men wearing bright yellow weather slickers. The wind whipped their hoods around their faces. A burly man with a thick beard and eyes narrowed against the wind led them. Captain Varga. He didn't resemble a savior. He looked profoundly inconvenienced and deeply shocked. "Do not move," Varga bellowed, his voice barely cutting through the wind. "The gap is wide. We will throw a line." Natanya looked downward. The crash container was separated from the catwalk by a 3-foot gap, descending into the dark labyrinthine cargo depths. She didn't wait for the line. The adrenaline crash was becoming deep, hollow nausea. She needed off this box. She grabbed Dwayne by his flight harness. "Get up," she ordered. Dwayne groaned but pushed up using his good arm. Natanya wrapped her arm around his waist, supporting his weight. "Step across on 3, she instructed. 1, 2, 3. They half stepped, half fell across the gap, crashing into the catwalk's steel railing. Varga's crew was there immediately, grabbing them, hauling them along the narrow walkway. Rough, calloused hands pulled at their survival vests. Someone positioned a thick wool blanket over Natanya's shoulders. It smelled strongly of mildew and engine grease. She barely registered it. "Are you the commanding officer?" Varga shouted over the wind, grabbing her arm. Natanya looked at him. Her helmet remained on, the visor cracked. She reached upward, struggled with the chin strap, and pulled it off, letting it drop onto the metal grating. Her hair was plastered to her forehead from sweat. Blood dripped freely from her lip down her chin. "I am," she stated flatly. "You are insane," Varga said, not insulting, but stating bewildered fact. He stared past her at the wreckage. "You have destroyed my containers." A sharp, hysterical laugh threatened to bubble from Natanya's throat. She choked it down, coughing instead. "Direct the bill to the Pentagon. They possess deep pockets." Varga shook his head, signaling his men to help Dwayne down the next stairs. "The bridge is that way. It is warm. We have medical supplies." Natanya followed the crew, her boots heavy on the grating. The ship rolled over a swell, and her knees buckled. She caught the handrail in time, her knuckles whitening. She wasn't heroic. She was a middle-aged pilot. Sore back, bleeding face, massive stack of paperwork waiting. They reached the heavy watertight door of the bridge superstructure. Varga yanked it open, and heat hit Natanya like a wall. The air carried the scent of stale coffee, tobacco smoke, and body odor. It was the most beautiful smell she had ever encountered. Inside, the bridge was dim, illuminated by radar screens' green glow. The wind's noise was muffled, reduced to heavy distant thudding against reinforced glass. A young crewman nervously handed Natanya a handheld radio. Your people," he said. "They are yelling very much." Natanya took the heavy plastic microphone. She pressed transmit. "Control, Eagle 2-1, she said. Profound silence answered. Then chaotic static burst through, followed by Trevon Mitchell's voice. Not calm AWACS protocol. This was ragged. 2-1. Is that you, Natanya? Affirmative, Tom, Natanya replied, leaning her back against a metal bulkhead and sliding gradually down until seated on the cold linoleum floor. She closed her eyes. Eagle 2-1 is down, safely on deck. Copy that, 2-1, Trevon said. She could hear him exhale, a sound conveying thousands of miles of stress releasing from his body. Coast Guard Rotary is launching from Keflavik. ETA is 2 hours. You handled that well, Natanya. Natanya looked around the room. Dwayne occupied a swivel chair, grimacing as a crewman awkwardly attempted cutting his flight sleeve to examine his arm. He appeared small, terrified, and very young. She examined her own hands. They were grease-covered, salted from sea spray, and stained with drying blood. The right hand remained locked in a slight claw formation from gripping the stick with such force. Yeah, Natanya muttered into the radio, her voice dripping exhaustion and deep, unshakable cynicism. We handled that well. Bring coffee when you collect us. She let the radio drop to her lap. Victory didn't describe her feelings. She felt the heavy, vibrating thrum of the ship beneath her, the absolute finality of the dark ocean outside, and the sudden, overwhelming urge to finally permit herself to cry. She didn't, of course. She remained seated, anticipating bruising to develop, listening to the relentless engine hum.